It's the divisional playoff round this weekend. The New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles. What changes can we expect from the Giants and from the Eagles as they square off for the right to go to the NFC title game? Coach Gene Clemons of Giants Country joins me to break it all down. Coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Chinata here with you, and it is divisional playoff week, Philly week. And joining me for today's show is Coach Gene Clemons, who is a writer over at Giants Country. He is also an actual football coach and a talent evaluator. He also has done work for Football Game Plan, The Athletic, and a whole bunch of others. He's got his own podcast, Talk Spicy, all kinds of stuff he's doing. Coach Gene is here to help us preview the Giants Eagles game, what changes we can expect, and what are the X factors and all that good stuff. So, Coach Gene, welcome again to Locked On Giants. We had you on last week. Glad to have you on again this week.
Absolutely, and Giants keep winning. We'll keep popping these things out. That's the beautiful thing about it. Looking forward to a great game. Obviously, a much different matchup than what they had last week. So, I'm really looking to see what Coach Dable and his staff has in store for the Eagles the third time around.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But one thing I want to ask you, you being a football coach and everything, I want to talk about the Giants' approach this week to practice. Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Giants did a walkthrough on Tuesday, all right, after coming back from Minnesota late on Sunday night into Monday morning. They had Monday off, walkthrough on Tuesday. They had a walkthrough Wednesday. And then on Thursday, they were in shells, which would suggest a light workout for them, not as opposed to full pads. Gene, when you look at that type of schedule, does it make sense to you? I mean, I think it does, because they just played the Eagles not too long ago, twice, as a matter of fact. I mean, do you think this makes sense, or do you think maybe, it's not the way to go?
Well, I think that at any level, once you get to the playoffs, what more physically are you doing, right? You're not trying to get the body necessarily ready. You're trying to get the mind. So everything is predicated on trying to keep players as healthy as possible, not trying to get any dings or bruises or bumps more than they already have. But it's really focusing in on the mind and allowing people to understand, hey, I've got to lock in mentally. Physically, the Giants are who they are. The Philadelphia Eagles are who they are. And in week now 20 of the season, I think you're not going to get any better physically. You're not going to prove anything by doing any type of hitting or bumping. So I'm not surprised to see them go light all three of these days. And I would be shocked if I saw them in full pads ever again for as long as their playoff run goes. I just don't think that's the way to go when you're in this long of a season.
When you break down the game at the end of the day, is it fair to say that the split percentage-wise is probably more on the mental side than on the physical side at this point, though?
For sure. It's probably 90-10 right now, because all of the physical work, all the muscle memory, these are the plays that we run. This is how we run them. Whatever wrinkle you're adding to those plays, whatever new thing you're putting into that scheme, it's only going to be adjusted off of some type of foundational structure. So any play action that you add is going to be a play action based off of some type of run that you've already created. So it's not like they have to learn something new. They just have to adjust. And adjustments are mental. They're not physical. And so As long as they understand what their job is. Most of these guys come from college programs that understood how to practice and how to practice fast, how to practice hard, but without causing injury. Alabama's notorious for it. Alabama does not hit as much as people think that they hit in Alabama. And a lot of the other elite level football teams, they operate the same way. You do it on game day. Leave those hits, leave that body, leave the bumps and bruises on game day, and really focus on making them the best they can mentally. So I would say it's about 90-10 right now.
Agreed. And, it's a topic that's not really getting talked about, but, just something I wanted to start off with because I found it interesting that's the approach they are taking. And I think the Eagles are taking a similar approach as well at this point, coming off their bye.
Absolutely. I would be surprised if any team at this point in the season is lining up and putting on full pads and still hitting. Like I said, we into week 7, 8, 9, 10 of a high school season, you're starting to see the physicality in practice start to wane off because you want to keep players as healthy as possible. So it's only right that you would see it at the highest level as well.
Now, let me ask you about, I mentioned the bye for the Eagles. A lot of people are making a big deal that, the Eagles are all rested, they're relaxed, they had an opportunity to heal some of the key bumps and bruises. But if you go back to week 18, the Giants, in a way, also had a bye without having a bye, except, their starters obviously didn't play, but they were locked into the game mentally. You talked about the importance of the mental aspect of it. Do you still think, though, that the Eagles have an advantage actually having a physical bye and not having to stand on the sideline and really worry about stuff? Or do you think it's just being overblown?
No, I think it's a legitimate thing, like having an extra week. It's not just not playing, it's having an entire week where they've been able to prepare for the Giants. So last week, while the Giants were preparing for Minnesota, the Eagles were preparing for the Giants. There's nothing that the Giants did in that Minnesota game that the Eagles hadn't seen before. It wasn't like there was some brand new, oh my gosh, this is different. This has been the Giants the entire season. The difference is that they just happen to be able to execute better versus Minnesota than they have versus any other team that they've played. In the 2 games that they've played, Minnesota have been 2 of their best offensive outputs of the season. And so when you factor that in, that really gave the Eagles that week to say, okay, this confirms what we thought. And now we have an opportunity to kind of solidify whatever game plan that we put in the week before without having to take any hits. For the Giants, they have to go in and hope that the work that they did versus that first team offense and first team defense of the Eagles in week 18 is enough to kind of, give them a good sense of what they're going to see here in the playoffs. But while the Eagles were preparing for them and working on new wrinkles, the Giants were getting prepared for the Vikings, and that can't be lost.
Indeed. And, probably not a whole lot of carryover from what they did against the Vikings, the Giants, versus what they could do from the Eagles. But again, Gene, the fact that they just saw the Eagles, isn't that, doesn't that kind of nullify any kind of advantage the Eagles had regarding having the extra week to prepare for the Giants? I mean, kind of like we had the same situation back with Washington.
I would say it definitely gives them it narrows the gap. It narrows the gap because the Giants got to play against the Eagles' first team offense and defense because the Eagles are still playing for something in that last week. But they didn't play with them with their starters for the most part. So their starters had to take mental reps, yes, not necessarily the physical ones, but then they had to change their brain to Minnesota. The Eagles came off that last week of the Giants. They had the week of the Super Wild Card to think about the Giants, and now they have this week to think about the Giants. So that's 3 weeks in a row that the Philadelphia has been able to just solely focus on New York, but New York had to change their attention to another opponent because it's win or go home. They can't afford to look ahead to what's going on. So now doubling back this week, yes, they should feel good about, hey, we saw them at full strength, or we saw them with all of their starters out there the final week of the season, but it doesn't change the fact that now they only have a certain amount of days to prepare for that because they've been preparing for Minnesota.
All right. Now, Coach Gene, coming up, I want to get you to break down what some of the things might be different in this third time. Hopefully the third time's a charm for the Giants. Actually, they haven't won in Philly since 2013, which is just mind-blowing. So we're going to talk about some of the changes that we can expect on offense coming up right after this. Hey, small business owners, if you are looking for the right people to help your small business fire on all cylinders, you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs today. Post a free job listing in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hiring hashtag framed to your LinkedIn profile to let everybody know that you're hiring. Over 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn Jobs every week and are just waiting to find opportunities with employers like your business. With LinkedIn Jobs, simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize whom you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So go ahead and post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Chinata, joined by Coach Gene Clemons of Giants Country, The Athletic, Football Game Plan, and a bunch of others. Also has his own podcast, Talk Spicy. Just check him out. He's all over the place, and he does a great job. And Coach Gene, let's now dive into changes that we might see on the offensive side of the ball for the Giants. Now, obviously, the Giants backups played the Eagles starters in week 18. I don't know how much we can glean from that, but certainly we can look at both games. What are some of the things that you anticipate the Giants might do a little differently than they did in the first matchup or two against the Eagles this year?
Well, I think they have to. I think you'll see them have an emphasis on trying to put the ball in the hands of Jalen Hurts and allowing him to matriculate the ball down the field. Knowing that he is coming off of injury, they're going to want to try to get hits on him, right? You want to try to hobble him. You want to try to get him, see where he's still stiff at. Where is he still sore at? So I think there may be opportunities where they entice Jalen Hurts to be the runner, but they have a guy looking out for him. You know, they would want a guy looking out for him because yes, he's going to get some yards and he's going to do, but they want to make sure they get hits on Jalen Hurts and see if that can soften him up, see if that can rattle him, if he can be rattled. I don't know if that's possible. See if it can just, make him a little bit erratic with his throws, because we know that when he's in a comfort zone, he's pretty darn good. And so I think that you'll see them really look to try to entice him to be the catalyst for the run game. What they absolutely cannot do is they cannot allow Jalen Hurts to be effective as a rusher and allow the running backs to be effective as rushers as well, because now that opens up the third aspect of the game, which is the RPOs and the play actions that come off of that when he's throwing to high-level receivers. And it's not just one. There are a few. It's not, and this is no offense to Adam Thielen, but Adam Thielen does not put fear in the hearts of people anymore like some of the wide receivers will for the Eagles this week. I think that when you look at the pieces that are around Jalen Hurts, as far as tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, there's just a lot more depth than there was last week for Kirk Cousins when you're talking about his receivers, tight ends, and running backs. Although, even then they were still able to do some things, but not consistently enough to put the ball in the end zone. I think you'll see them try to make Jalen Hurts a runner and say, hey, beat us with your legs. but you're not going to be able to just hand the ball off to these other running backs and let them shine. And you're not going to just be able to bombs away over the top. You're going to have to tuck this down, run it, and possibly take some hits that you don't want to take.
So how does Coach Wink do that? I mean, obviously this game, he's going to have McKinney, he's going to have Jackson. We saw a little bit of what they bring that they, the Giants had been missing with the two of them out of the lineup. I don't know at this point whether Ojulari is going to play. I'm a little concerned about that. Fabian Moreau is also, dealing with an injury. But so how does Coach Wink do this? Say, okay, Jalen Hurts, we're going to take away your receivers. We're going to take away your rushing lanes. You beat us now.
I think what you'll see Jackson match up. I think you'll see Jackson match up. I think you'll see help over the top. They'll be more physical at the point of attack with the Eagles receivers because the Eagles receivers aren't the shiftiest receivers. They've got a lot of speed. They've got some size. They've got those guys. They don't really have a ton of juke and make you miss guys. So they'll be physical with them at the point of attack, help over the top. I think this could be a Landon Collins type of game. I think this is the type of game where you bring Landon Collins in as that bastardized dime linebacker, and you allow him to be the spy on Jalen Hurts. Most all of the run game that they have for the Philadelphia Eagles has a read element to it. That's what makes it special because there's always the opportunity that Jalen Hurts can pull it. So have him as a sure tackler who can come in and help if the ball is handed off. But he knows that if Hurts pulls it, it is his job to go and seek and destroy Jalen Hurts. And he doesn't have any coverage responsibility unless it's for sure going to be a pass. And if he feels like he's got to come off of something, he's the guy that's designated to come off of it to go get Jalen Hurts, not the other defensive backs. Where guys like Hurts and other quarterbacks that can move around hurt you is when they break the pocket and now you don't want them to take off running. You'll have someone break coverage to go get them, and now they hit the guy that you were supposed to be covering. But if you have a guy like Landon Collins that does not have legitimate coverage responsibility, just be able to eye in and focus on stopping the run and then stopping Jalen Hurts from being able to tuck it and run on passing plays. Now you put him in a position where he's got to make a decision. Do I want to take those 2 steps on beyond the line and have to hook slide? Or am I going to try to take a chance to make Landon Collins miss or juke him or whatever, run him over, and now I've got to make myself susceptible to another hit beyond what I'm already getting just in my normal job as a quarterback.
Interesting philosophy. And I know you're working on something as we record this, you're working on something for Giants Country about spying the quarterback, which, I don't think it's something they really did much of the first 2 games, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Absolutely. No, it's not. And I think it's just by design. I think that they're trying to hedge their bets. It's interesting because Coach Wink started off the game versus Minnesota with normal Giants football. It was let's bring a 5th one. Let's try to get the ball out of his hands. And to Kirk Cousins, to his credit, he was hitting the proper check down on the blitz. That guy had an opportunity to run free. After I think the first couple of series, he said, "Hey, you know what? This isn't working. Let's rush this 4. Let's play coverage behind it. Let's make it hard for him to find these windows." All of a sudden, the Giants defense came to life because that front 4, even when Ojulari went out, was still able to get pressure and hold the fort in the run game and with the pass with those front 4 guys. And so if they can do that again, then that will leave the only element that the Eagles have left, which is Jalen Hurts, which is something that Minnesota did not have in Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins wasn't trying to beat you with his legs, whereas Jalen Hurts is 100% okay with beating you with his legs. He's going to do whatever he can to win the game. If that's running it or passing it, he does not care. So if you give him only one option, and his only one option is to run because you've taken away the run and you've taken away the pass, now that leaves him open for some hits that might leave him vulnerable to some injuries or to some flare-ups from injuries that he's had in the past.
Kind of brutal strategy, but at this point the stakes are so high. You got to do what you got to do. All right, now I got to ask you this because I mentioned before that I'm a little concerned about whether Azeez Ojulari is going to play in this game. He's dealing with a bruised quad, and he's been limited all week. And as we record this, the injury report hasn't come out, but I would not be surprised if he's listed as questionable on the injury report. If he cannot go or if he is limited, how concerned are you about the containment on the edges with the run? Because I would think Jimenez would get most of those snaps, maybe splitting them with Jihad Ward a little bit. What do they lose if they don't have Ojulari in there?
Well, obviously, the explosiveness that Ojulari brings as an edge rusher is something you can't make up for. But also his ability to change direction. I think that's one of the things that makes him and Kayvon so special is that they have that ability to sink their hips quickly, change direction, and redirect to go in and run a quarterback down. So if he's not at full strength, I would be concerned to play him because I like that bruised quad is one where it's a firing injury. So if he's not able to load and fire the same way that he would normally be able to load and fire, I don't know how effective he's going to be. So that's what they're going to lose. But I think a combination of guys coming in to play, more Jihad Ward on run downs, and then getting in more athletic guys on passing situations, I think you can kind of piece together missing out. It's not like they're not used to playing without Azeez. He's missed some time this year, the same way that early on that when they were playing without Kayvon Thibodeau, they didn't miss a beat because he had missed some time this year. So I think that they're acutely built to make up for this loss, but it's a loss.
And Gene, as you were talking, the Giants injury report did come in. Ojulari is the only one listed on with a designation. He is listed as questionable. So sure enough, the concerns that I had, they are legit, I think. So we'll have to see. I know Ojulari was optimistic that he would be able to do something, but players, they tend to be a little bit more optimistic than realistic. So hopefully they can get him up and running, and even if it's on a part-time basis, because to not have him, and he's been snake bit, that poor guy, all year long. He's just been so snake bit. To not have him, I think that it changes the complexion of the defense and maybe how Coach Wink calls it.
Absolutely. I think it definitely will make him want to call more blitzes, make him want to send some type of pressure off the edge from where Ojulari would normally be, send those defensive ends or edge rushers that might be in place of Ojulari to a B gap look to send some pressure. But I really think that comes at the detriment of the coverage, obviously, because once you start sending blitzes, you're either lining up in some type of zone coverage where there's somebody missing from the coverage, or you're in man. And now if you're in man and Jalen Hurts breaks the pocket, who's there to look for him? That's the number one way athletic quarterbacks are able to take advantage of aggressive defenses who play man behind them, because if they're able to get away from the pressure, there's nobody there to pull them up, to stop them from running, and they pick up big yards, especially a guy like Jalen Hurts and a guy like Daniel Jones has been able to do all this season. Two of the leading rushers as quarterbacks in the league.
All right, now, Coach Gene, we're going to talk about the Giants offense and what we can expect to see changed up. We'll do that right after this quick break. Hey, Giant fans, we're all trying to eat healthier now that it's the new year. And if you haven't tried Built Bar yet, you're missing out on a really healthy and delicious treat. Built Bars are covered in real milk chocolate. They have multiple flavors available in nut and nut-free variety, and they are so good for you. They're low in sugar and carbs, and they're high in protein. You will really enjoy the taste of these bars. They don't taste anything like the chemically created protein bars that other companies make. These are pure milk chocolate covered bars with a lot of goodness packed inside. And what's also great about Built Bars is that they're made with collagen protein, which provides a ton of health benefits. So eat something that tastes good this year and is good for you. And now you don't have to wait anymore for your box to ship from Built. Simply stop in at your local Walmarts or Sam's Club and grab yourself a box of Built Bars, the delicious tasting treat that is sure to satisfy your sweet tooth. Hey, Giant fans, thanks for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you local insights you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Chinata, your host, with Coach Gene Clemons. We are getting you ready for Saturday night. It's all right for fighting, and the Giants and the Eagles, they're going to be fighting it out for the NFC Divisional title, the right to go on to the championship game against either the 49ers or the Dallas Cowboys, who play on Sunday. And Coach Gene, let's talk now about the Giants offense and changes that you think that Mike Kafka might be looking to make against that Eagles defense.
It's hard to pinpoint changes that I think they'll make, but I think they have to find a way to establish the run game. This is not the 29th or 30th ranked defense in the NFL like they played last week. This is a bona fide defense with Pro Bowl caliber, all caliber defensive backs back there that will not be afraid of the receiving core, with edge rushers and guys up the middle who are adept at getting after the quarterback, with linebackers who are athletic enough to chase after Daniel Jones when he breaks the pocket. This presents a really difficult task for the Giants. What they have to do is they have to get Saquon Barkley established in this game. In my mind, Saquon should be as healthy as he's been the entire year, because he didn't really get much usage in the Minnesota game. He was just highly effective when he did get used. Then he had the week off the week before. So when you look at how he's been utilized these last few weeks, low maintenance on the body. If there was ever a time you needed to ride him, I know I come in here and talk about it a lot, but if there was ever a time you wanted to ride him, this is the time you want to ride him, because you have to find a way to get this Eagles defense off balance. You got to get them thinking one thing so you can take advantage of the other. The play action has to become a part of the plan, not just because we're running it, but because Barkley is having success. And you're going to have to find a way to help your right tackle in pass blocking. They haven't done it all year. You've got to chip. You've got to bring some chipping off that right side. You've got to have a tight end, get some hands on the guy. You got to have a back, get some hands on the guy on the way out into a route that allows Evan Neal to be able to get that half a second that he needs, that he just seems to be behind, and allows those guys to turn the corner on him. If he's able to get that half second, if he's able to get that defensive end lined up chest to chest with them, he's able to stonewall anybody. You're not going to just out-muscle him. It is the edge rush, getting on his hip, turning him, opening up that gate towards the quarterback. That's where he's had issues all season. That's where he's continued to have issues at. So if you allow him, if you give him a chip, if you give him a hand from a tight end before they go out into a route, you're going to have much more success in the pass game, because I do think over the last couple of weeks that interior offensive line now this become a little bit more solidified with guys being healthy and having a rotation. They've been better. They've been able to protect a Feliciano, who I believe is the worst offensive lineman on the offensive line. I know people like him, but he's the worst out of all five. Even with Neil struggling, like they've been able to give help and help him to not get pushed directly back into Daniel Jones' face, which has allowed Daniel Jones lanes to run when he felt pressure. So if they can continue to do that, they have an opportunity to be successful, because apparently nobody can cover crossing routes these days. You see it across the board, like NFC, AFC, doesn't matter who it is. People are having issues covering crossing routes, and the Giants run really good crossing route concepts that are going to get people open if Daniel Jones has time to deliver the ball.
Now, you mentioned Daniel Jones. Let's talk about Daniel and just the type of ball he's been playing down the stretch. I know you've kind of been iffy about him. Do you think he's finally taken that step forward, or are you still kind of iffy about his long-term prognosis as a franchise quarterback?
I mean, I've said a few times that I wasn't going to like delve into what's his down the future until after the season. I'm just going to say this. Daniel Jones is playing the best football that he's played as a Giant. He's playing the best football he's played as a Giant. He's playing winning football. If he's able to keep the level of football that he plays against Minnesota for everybody else, then I think that he's a guy who's going to who can do things moving on into the future. But I think that needs to be seen versus these elite level teams, like especially these elite level defenses, like we see in Philly, and what he does against teams like that should matter and should weigh more than what he does versus the 30th ranked defense in the NFL. And so, like, I think he's doing what's being asked of him. I think he's performed masterfully. The one thing I will say that I always kind of cringe at is we can't have it both ways, right? We can give Daniel Jones his props. We can say that he's playing well, that he's doing great, that he's doing a great job. But then when he doesn't do great, when he doesn't do well, we can't blame it on everybody else. Like, that's the one thing that I don't. Everybody always tries to put the built-in disclaimer for him. Well, we don't have these guys. We can't say that. Well, you know, Joe Shane he found the gym in this new wide receiver, and then go out and say, well, he's throwing the guys that we got off the practice squad. Like, no, you got to say that. Oh, they found a really good wide receiver off the practice squad. Like you can't say that he's throwing to fourth stringers and whatever. When Darius Slayton's out there, who's been a number 2 and in some instances a number 1 on this team for the last 3 to 4 years. So, like, we can't have it both ways, and that's where we get the debate with Daniel Jones confused. Is he playing the best ball that he's played as a New York Giant? In my opinion, yes. How far that goes? We'll see. We'll see after the season.
What about, you mentioned the receivers, and let's talk about what they can do, if anything, differently against that Eagles defense. That pass defense is pretty good. And I think really they mixed it up, if I'm not mistaken, in the last game. I think we saw more man as opposed to zone, which is what I think they did in the first game. So that being said, I mean, where does the strength lie for those receivers, facing man or zone? And, can they overcome the opposite if they see that more often?
So I think the interesting part about the Giants receivers is you have 3 really different receivers, right? Richie James, who, by the way, is not just a special teamer who was thrust into receiver duty because of injury. When he was healthy in San Francisco, go back and look at his stats. When he was healthy in San Francisco, he was an ascending receiver for San Francisco before injuries kind of derailed him in San Francisco. But what he brings that shiftiness, that ability to make somebody miss. Slayton is a speed guy. If he gets you on his hip, he can pull away from you. If you're even with him, he's leaving you. The Eagles don't exactly have speed burners at cornerback. So the ability to be able to run by them, that's there. With Richie James, the ability to be able to miss, that's there. The other receivers, Hodges, he has an ability to find open holes in zones. He's very good at kind of understanding how to work within the open areas and sit down and allow a quarterback to find him. And I think that's why Daniel Jones has found such a connection with him, is because he just understands how to get open in those areas. And he's a big body. He's a big body who I believe that the Giants have been lacking for many years now, is a guy with some real good physical presence to be able to kind of sit down and make his presence felt in an open area. And so you've got three different types of receivers. So that means that the Eagles have to prepare for three different types. And so I think that the opportunity to have a guy running off somebody while someone sits in a zone underneath them, or have someone like going for a double slant while someone's on a swing pattern or a flat route, get the ball out in the hands of a James quickly or a Barkley quickly, find your tight ends in the play action. I think all of that is available for these defensive backs. I think the one thing that the Giants receivers are going to have to do is they're going to have to make sure that they get off the line of scrimmage. That's going to be the biggest thing. They can't be disrupted at the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to get clean releases, get off the line of scrimmage to allow the meshes to work the way that they're supposed to work on these crossing routes. And then they have to be sure-handed. They have to be sure-handed at all times. Make sure that they catch the balls that they're supposed to catch. Make sure try to be plus 50% on the 50-50 balls, the ones that that's a tough ball to catch, but I got to make a play for Daniel Jones the same way that Daniel Jones is making a play for me. When I don't get open and Daniel Jones takes off and picks up that first down, that is Daniel Jones making a play for his wide receivers. So when Daniel Jones throws you a 50-50 ball, you've got to come down with that 50-50 ball 60 to 70% of the time. You've got to make a play for him the same way that he's making a play for you. That's how it works. That's how you engender that confidence where your quarterback says, I can throw to him even if he might be covered. That's what we see out of the greats on other teams when it comes to their receivers and their quarterbacks.
Gene, what's the X factor, do you think, in this game that could maybe sway things over to the Giants side?
I really think defensively it could be a guy like Landon Collins. And I might be wrong with the player, because it may not be Landon Collins. It may be someone else. But a guy who can operate in that dime package as that second linebacker, who can live and exist in a world where they're asked to make tackles, but then have the athleticism to be able to track down a Jalen Hurts when he takes off. I think that's the guy that you'll see them in some manner spy with. That's the guy that they'll send if they're going to send that fifth guy on a blitz. I think that's the guy who could have an opportunity to change the balance. If not every play, but just a couple of plays that might be able to get a 3-and-out here and there, or hold them to a field goal instead of a touchdown. Just those little bit of changes can make the difference between whether or not the Giants can keep this thing close and have a chance to take off with it in the fourth quarter, like we've seen them do so many times this year.
Do you think the Giants can beat the Eagles?
Yes, I do think the Giants can beat the Eagles. I think it's going to be a much more difficult game for the Giants to beat the Eagles than it was for the Giants to defeat the Vikings.
Why do you say that?
I say that because I think when you look at the Vikings game, and we even said it last week, the difference in winning or losing was the turnovers versus the Vikings. They don't have to turn the ball over. They cannot turn the ball over against the Eagles and still get beat by 21 points. Like, this Eagles defense and offense is that good that they can hold them without points or hold them to field goals and score touchdowns. But if they're able to limit the amount of touches for Philly, if they're able to hold Philly to field goals instead of touchdowns, if they keep it close into the fourth quarter, then the Giants know how to get it done in the fourth quarter. They know how to make those plays in the fourth quarter. It becomes muscle memory, right? And they have the muscle memory built up now to say, if this gets into the fourth quarter and it's close, which it hasn't been really in games versus Philadelphia, this gets into the fourth quarter and it's close, that's a wrap for Philly. Like, we're going to win this game. I think they'll have that confidence to say that because of the success that they've seen in the fourth quarter versus teams like Baltimore, that was a playoff team with Lamar Jackson out there, and be able to go, okay, well, if we can do it versus them, why can't we do it versus Philly?
Going to be an interesting one down there in Philly, Gene. Always electrifying when it's Giants, Eagles. That city's going to be rocking. We'll probably hear
Giants fans, if you're going to Philadelphia, take it easy. Relax. Relax.
Haven't done.
Remember, you're in Philadelphia. Relax.
The city of brotherly love, which doesn't like the Giants, doesn't like any football team.
They don't like anyone. They don't like anyone except for Phillies. I think it's the city of brotherly haters. That's what I would say. Gosh. A lot of haters in Philly. A lot of haters.
It depends on what part of town you go to. I find Center City's not too bad.
No, I love Philly. I really enjoy going to Philadelphia. I've met some great people in Philadelphia. It's all within the sports fun.
Yes.
But also be careful. Be careful, Giants fans.
Yes.
Not too much.
Especially if you're driving down and you have Jersey plates.
Absolutely.
As I found out a few years ago.
Absolutely. A target is a target at the end of the day.
Coach Gene, great stuff as always. I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again next week. We'll be talking about, I hope, the NFC Championship game. So
let's not only hope that we're talking about the Giants, but let's hope we're talking about the Giants versus the Cowboys.
Yes.
How great would that be, right?
Oh my! I was just saying that to somebody.
How fantastic would a run be where the Giants go to the Super Bowl, going through Philadelphia and Dallas to get there? I'm saying, you can't make a better script.
Tell me about it.
By the way, at that point, does it even matter if the Giants win? If the Giants beat the Eagles and the Cowboys to make it to the Super Bowl, isn't that just like hanging up a banner? You should just be like, you know what? We won already. Doesn't even matter what happens on the AFC side.
Well, one thing at a time, obviously. But yeah, you're right. That would be kind of sweet. I think if the Giants could get to the Super Bowl and get back at the Eagles and the Cowboys for all the times they ruined stuff. So good stuff, Gene. We will hopefully be talking about the NFC Championship game next week. Appreciate you, Giant fans. Appreciate you. We will be back probably on Monday. I'll probably be taping the next podcast, given that is a night game. And hopefully it'll be a happy recap and it won't be about Baggy Day. Fingers crossed that it's not about Baggy Day. So enjoy the game Saturday night. And we will talk to you. Actually, Sunday we'll talk to you. The game's Saturday. So we'll have the new podcast for you on Sunday. So we'll see you then, Giant fans. Have a good one.